Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback and $2.99 ebook download, including my bestseller, NYPD Laughing in the Line of Duty. Today's episode, we have a very special guest. If you've read any of my books, you know him as my duplicitous, double-crossing younger brother, Fredo Ferrari. Fredo, how are you today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how this is recording, but we were talking off air. You kind of look like you're in witness protection with the mob, and they've got your face kind of shaded. We can't figure out what it is, but the audio was coming in good, so we decided to go with it because I know you're a very, very busy man. So I'm trying to get my audience up to speed about you. So today we're going to talk.
No one really needs to see me in high definition anyway.
Well, that's true, too. Today we're going to talk about my book, Confessions of a Catholic High School Graduate, which basically details my brother and I's childhood of growing up in the Bronx and what led us on our paths to the New York City Police Department. So I'm going to kind of paint a picture of the way my brother and I grew up. We grew up in a row house about 100 yards from the Cross Bronx Expressway. Every day between 3 and 7 p.m., the traffic would back up. We didn't have air conditioning, so in the summertime, the smell of diesel fuel would just pass through our house. And it was interesting. Everyone had the windows open, and you could hear the neighbors talking, whatever was going on in their lives, or the swearing of motorists and truckers on the Cross Bronx Expressway. And Throgs Neck section of the Bronx was a working-class community. It was mostly Irish and Italian. I mean, there were other nationalities there, but I would say 85 to 90% of the neighborhood was Irish and Italian. And most of the children went to Catholic school, one way or another. Some kids went to public school, but for the vast majority, we went to Catholic high school. And that's the book. The book is about our childhood and the situations we got ourselves in and out. And I want to start with my brother and I, at an early age. This is before kids with computers and tabs and laptops and cell phones. Our mother would tell us, like on Saturdays or even during vacations, just get out of the house. Just go. And don't come back until the lights come back on or till dinner time. And we made our own fun.
We found our own food.
Well, explain.
Okay. Well, it's not like mom would prepare you lunch or there was Lunchables or anything. We had to go find places that had food, like the school had a lunch program where you could sneak in. You could go up to the pizzeria. You could ask the guy, listen, would you need me to sweep up for a little bit? The guy would be like, yeah, I'll give you a slice of pizza. Or you'd go to the guy up the corner, you'd do a job for him. You'd get him some, hey, do you need coffee? Yeah. He'd pay you, you go get coffee. You make a little spare change here and there. You make your own food. Parents never worried about giving us food in the middle of the day. You found a way to eat.
Yeah, I remember that. I hadn't thought of that in a long time. I mean, you and Pinhead, and that's your childhood friend. We're not going to say his name, but we used to, and he's referred to in my book as Pinhead. He's a nice guy, but for whatever reason, he got that nickname. It's not a nice one.
Because his parents used to shave his head, and his head came to a point.
Anyway, you and Pinhead were you were entrepreneurs. I remember in the wintertime, you guys would go out with snow shovels. And we would start shoveling in front of the liquor store, in front of the guy on the corner that had the photography studio. Now, that's an interesting story because the guy that owned the photography studio, I don't know if you remember this. We used to shovel his walk and stuff. And then, when the winter, went away, I never went back. You and Pinhead used to go to his store every now and then and get him lunch or grab him a coffee. Do you know he killed somebody?
I know a lot of those places up there were owned by mob guys. Later on, we found out much years later. But no, I didn't know that he killed somebody.
He wasn't a mob guy. He was just a regular square guy. What happened was he bought another building next to a medical center, and he got into a dispute with one of the doctors about a shared driveway. And the doctor and him got into this huge argument. The doctor, this is what I'm remembering, the doctor went into the photography studio and kicked his ass, and he had a glass eye. And he beat him so bad that his glass eye fell out. Well, the doctor left, and I guess he retrieved a gun from his office. He went downstairs and killed a guy on Tremont Avenue. You don't
Was
remember
that over by Lafayette?
Between Lafayette and Phillip on Tremont.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember hearing something about that.
Yeah, we didn't have a sheltered childhood. Like, I'm not saying we grew up in South Central, but we were privy to seeing things that you just kids nowadays couldn't fathom.
Things just seemed to happen in front of us. You just seemed to be there. We were like the Forrest Gumps. You'd be standing there and something would just happen in front of you.
I remember that we lived, again, a couple of feet from the Bronx Expressway. I remember as a child, I was little, and I remember a man walked past, and about 10 minutes later, he comes running back down the street with a case of beer on his shoulder, a box. And he's trying to run across 8 lanes of the Bronx Expressway to get to the other side. And I hear someone screaming at him, "Hey, come back here." And as he's trying to cross the Bronx, a car hit him and killed him. And I just remember, like, the bottles of beer. I just remember it was a mess all over the Bronx Expressway. And Dad's like, "All right, Vic, come inside." And the cops were out there for a while and just, go play out in the backyard for a while. It just, people just seem to get over things a lot quicker.
Well, if you remember, when the Bronx Expressway used to back up, we'd go into our house, we'd go into our friend's house, and grab whatever they had in the refrigerator. If you had a couple of sodas, if your father had bottles of water, if you had a couple of beers, you'd grab whatever, and then you'd sell it to the people on the Bronx Expressway. It was 100% profit for us. And once you started getting low, and people would be, if a guy pulled out a 20, because you were getting like 50 cents, a water, 50 cents, the guy would throw you a buck or something because they were sitting in traffic. The guy would be like, "Hey, you got a beer?" And you say, $2, $3. The guy would be like, "Yeah, sure." Sometimes the guy would whip out a 20, and we'd all look at each other like, "Okay, get ready, we're going to run." And the guy, because everything that we had was free. It was all on the arm. The guy gives us a 20, it's like, "Okay, we'll be right back." And we turn around, we start running. The guy's not going to abandon his car. He's in traffic. We jump over 2 fences. We're gone. $20 is a lot of money in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, you were a perp.
Yeah, I know.
I never did that. You were a perp.
Listen, we are far beyond being prosecuted at this point, especially in my secret location. Nobody's going to find me here. Nobody's looking for me.
All right, let's start with your unhealthy obsession with fireworks. In my book, I go into great detail about, nowadays parents hand out a couple of sparklers or those little punk things and, or snaps, which there's a story about that too. And, like the helicopter parents, or as another person told me, snowplow parents that kind of move the obstacles out of the way for their children. We weren't allowed to play with fireworks, but that certainly didn't keep them out of our hands. Do you remember, I'm going to test your memory, do you remember where we used to purchase illegal fireworks?
Well, there was 2 places, but say...
Right. Not that close. Right. There was a mailman.
A post office guy. Yeah, the guy was smoking a cigarette, handing out boxes of M80s and rockets and all kinds of, stuff that could be used in a third world country to blow holes in things. These were real dangerous fireworks.
Like every afternoon in the summer, especially leading up to the 4th of July, you'd see 10, 15, 20 teenage boys hanging around this guy's little house like crows, sitting on his fence, sitting on his stoop. He'd pull up with this older car in his mailman outfit, and like you said, he'd have a cigarette dangling out of his mouth, and he'd go, "Hey, you got cherry bombs? You got..." like right off of a main drag. Like, it's not like he was in the middle of nowhere. He was on the main drag. And if a cop drove by, or nowadays someone with a cell phone camera, he'd be dead in 15 minutes. But he'd go, yeah, hold on a second. He'd go into the house. He'd come out about 5 minutes later with a beer, with the cigarette still hanging out of his mouth. And if you remember, the garage was right next to the house. And it was packed. I just remember, and he would walk in there with a cigarette. "All right, what do you want?" Like, the bigger kids would kind of muscle their way to the front of the line, and they would come riding out. And like, boys were riding away on bicycles with like a brick of firecrackers or a gross of this or bags full of that.
That's how I know how much a gross is, because it's 144, because that's what the penny rockets came in.
I like the penny rockets with report.
With report. We used to do the most sinister things. Well, first of all, you either get it from that guy, Or if you're low on cash, you make friends with a kid whose fathers in the mob are mobbed up, because
Well, that's where they came from.
around June, late June, the trucks would pull up, lots of gold, Hawaiian shirts, would be loading fireworks into the basements of their own houses. And then you make friends with one of these kids. And when you're hanging out over his house, maybe one or two cases of M80s or Blockbusters disappears. And then afterwards, like I said, you start doing the most evil, sinister shit.
No. You.
Okay.
Not me, you. So what we used to do is, well, it started with, across the street from us, there was a family that used to put on a Grucci display. I mean, of fireworks that started about 4:30 in the afternoon, and it went in well after midnight. And the cops would come, and they would all disappear into the houses, and they'd be burning paper in front of the house. The cops would leave. It looked like Iraq. I mean, the gunpowder was so thick. And what we would do is, you and I, we were too little. But what we would do is, I remember the day, like it was yesterday, the day after the 4th of July, you and I would go out into the front of the house.
Collecting the duds.
We would collect all the duds, and we'd put all the duds in a garbage can, drag them into the backyard. And I remember one year we got a little ballsy. I mean, we were young. I mean, like probably middle school, or if not grammar school. I remember walking up to Tremont with an empty gallon container of milk, and having the guy give me 50 cents worth of gas, which was probably close to a gallon. I remember it looked like punch. I mean, who would sell a kid with a milk container $1 worth of 50 cents worth of gas? We would pour it in that garbage can. And I remember one time I lit that match, and it felt like a warm blanket came over me. And I'm rolling around on the floor, and it burnt my hair, the little eyebrows I had back then. And the garbage can was just out of control, and it would burp every now and then. Like the fire was going, it would burp up and go, and shoot a thing of burnt paper into the yard. And our grandparents who were watching this, because at the time I think Mom had just started working at the bank, or she was doing bookkeeping. Our grandfather comes running out with a hose. I mean, they were in their 80s. He puts the fire out. He gives me a shot in the ass. He sends us into the house, right? And then he tries to clean up the crime scene as best he could. And Dad comes home, and he notices, like, it looked like a UFO landed in the yard because of the burnt ring from the garbage can. And there's burnt paper all over the place. And Dad was like, what happened? And then the two of us got pummeled. But I just remember, and when we got older, we would go down to, so Preston High School, where J-Lo went to high school, right next door to it now there's condominiums, like these condominium townhouses. But before then, there was an empty baseball field. You would walk through this empty baseball field, and then there was a drop, and there was a little beach, little private beach no one knew about. And my friend lived across the street. So in the summertime, especially on weekends, we would go down there with tons of fireworks. We would go down there probably about 4 or 5 o'clock with shovels. You remember this? We would dig foxholes and build forts. And once that sun went down, baby, we were shooting rockets. And you had like a grenade launcher. You had like this pipe with like you and Pinhead built this pipe with like a handle on it, and then you rode across it. You just fucked with the wrong guy. Do you remember that?
Shock and awe, baby. Yeah. I can't believe that we didn't lose eyes, that nobody seriously got hurt. We would lob Blockbusters and M80s back and forth. It's like grenade, and we.
No. You.
Okay, fair enough. What I was saying before, getting back to the sinister stuff. We saw that movie Hollywood Nights, and in the movie they light a bag of dog crap, and they put it on the guy's porch. He stomps on it, and he gets poop all over him. Well, we tried that a couple of times, and nobody went for it. Everybody was hip to it. So what I used to do is I'd gather up all the dog shit I could get, because it was everywhere in the Bronx. No matter where you went, there was Doberman. Yeah, Doberman Pinscher, Rottweiler, Husky. That would all. You pick it up, you put it in a bag, you put a Blockbuster in there, you squirt a little lighter fluid on there. As soon as you hit it with the match, you don't knock on the door. You don't try and be funny and stand there. You just start running, because you got about 3 to 6 seconds to get clear. Because when that dog shit goes, it's going to spray in all directions. It's in the summer, it's going to go up the side of the guy's house. It's going to get in every nook and cranny. And as soon as the sun comes up, it's going to reek. There's no getting rid of it. I don't know why we did this to people. If I did it to you, I apologize.
Anyway, speaking of explosives, can you share the story about what you found at the beach and brought home one day?
Okay, we went out to, I think it was section 2 or 3 of Jones Beach. It was the far section. And didn't realize that years before, that I guess during World War I and World War II, they used to test munitions out there. So me and my friends are playing. It was me, Mike, Pinhead, and I found this shell. And the shell, to give a size to it, was about this big. Now, I'm a small kid. We're looking at it, tapping on it. Wow, look what I found. It's the most amazing thing I ever found. I start putting it in my my shorts. Hey, look how big my dick is. You know, everything is funny, right? So I'm going to take it home. I'm going to try and find something to do with it. I don't know. This is the greatest find I could ever have. I smuggle it in the car, get it home, don't know what to do with it. I don't know when I showed it to you or when you found it. It might have been when I was downstairs.
You were in the basement, and I remember you had it in Dad's vise. And you were like, you had all his tools laid out, and it was like you were trying to take this thing apart, and I didn't think nothing of it. I just was like, I go, what are you going to do with this? I'm going to take it apart. And I'm like, you're an idiot. And I should have sounded the alarm, but I was doing my own thing. So, I mean, we were like, again, probably maybe I was in middle school. You were still in grammar school. But I remember Dad came downstairs.
Well, I got vice grips on it. I got vice grips trying to get the top out. It wouldn't work. So I get the hammer, and I'm going to start hitting on it. And Dad comes down, and what the hell are you doing? And it's like, I found this. I'm going to take it apart. And he's like, stop what you're doing right now. He was freaking out. And I'm going, Dad, it's okay. It's okay. And he's like, no, it's not okay. Step away from it. Takes it out of the vise, and he's holding it, and it like, you know, like it's about to go off, which it possibly could have gone off. It was right underneath, in the basement, it was right underneath our grandmother that sat in her chair 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The running joke in the family is if I would have hit that, I would have blew myself up, and I would have blown her through the chair. So my father goes, we got to take this to the police. Jumps in the car.
I went with you. We went to the precinct.
Brings it in, walks up to the desk. He pulls it, like nobody's giving him any attention. He pulls it out, and he goes, can I get some help with this? Suddenly, the whole place clears out. Desk sergeant goes, what is that? And he goes, my son found it. And suddenly, you know, they're calling this guy, they're calling that guy, they're calling the bomb.
They were interviewing Dad. I remember that. Like, we didn't just drop that off and leave. We dropped it off. It caused a shitstorm. I remember the sergeant brought it into the garage, and then the cops were complaining that their cars were parked in there. And the bomb squad came, and then they were talking to Dad. It's not like we just left. Like, that took a couple of hours where Dad
had the hot lights, and they're asking me questions. And I'm going, and they're asking me, like, what were you going to do with it? I said I was going to hit it with a hammer. And he goes, why would you do that? And I went, I don't know, to see what would happen. Like, we were stupid. There's no manual. Okay.
I wouldn't have done that.
There's no manual. There's no Google. There's no... It was, you know, it was hands-on. It was figure it out as you go.
Another story from my book, Confessions of a Catholic High School Graduate, as we're covering, is our father forbade us for having BB guns. I don't want to see a BB gun in this house. I don't want you playing with BB guns. He did not want us with BB guns. Well, I traded some baseball cards for a Daisy air rifle. And I used to hide it in the attic, and I used to take it over to the cemetery, and the old St. Raymond Cemetery on the other end of Throgs Neck, it was like no one was visiting anybody, and I would line soda cans on top of the tombstones of people that died from the early 1900s and just shoot target practice. And then you found out that I had the BB gun. I guess I was smuggling it back into the house one day, and all of a sudden it's like, it's not mine anymore, it's ours, because we used to call our parents the feds. And I would say, don't make me call the feds on this, Vic. So you came up with an interesting idea from a game after watching a movie. Why don't you share that with us?
All right. The movie was The Deadly Tower, the shooting in Texas where the guy goes up to the roof and starts picking off college students. We thought that was the greatest thing. Anytime we saw something on TV, Evel Knievel jumped something, shooting, Evil Dead, anything that came on TV, the next day we were trying it out. So we saw the Deadly Tower. We got a rifle. Hey, we could do that. We got a BB pistol from our Uncle Jimmy. It didn't work too well.
No, it didn't.
But it worked well. And it didn't have enough power to like kill something, but it had enough power to hurt something. So we figured out, let's play Deadly Tower. Because, when left to your own devices, things happen. So, of course, you wanted to start off first. And you wanted to, I'll be the shooter. Okay. So we played football, so we had football equipment. So we got a couple of helmets and a couple of shoulder pads. Well, when I say couple, it was only two. There was 4 of us playing, but only 2 people got helmets and shoulder pads. The rest of the guys put on extra sweatshirts. And there you were from the bathroom window. And I don't remember a lot, but what I do remember is you were told no headshots. No headshots, no face shots, no crotch shots, no shooting at close range. Everything that you disregarded. Because your first shot ricocheted right off my helmet.
Now,
and I'm screaming, no headshots.
No. As I remember this like it was yesterday, I wanted to take you out first, but I knew Pinhead had no tolerance to pain, and I knew he would make a lot more noise. I got him in the ass, and he was screaming like his throat was cut. He had no tolerance to pain. I remember that. He was always screaming and running around like he was spastic. Yeah,
but the idea of the game was to get into the house and get up the stairs to you and disarm you.
But I locked the door.
You locked the door. So we're running around. Like I said, there's a ricochet off my helmet, and I'm going, this son of a bitch, he's cheating. It's like, you're cheating. And it's not like you can quit because there's no way out. So we start storming the house. We're using Pinhead as a shield. We have the shoulder pads and the helmets, me and Mike, and we grab Pinhead, and we're running towards, he has a sweatshirt on, and you're tagging him, and it was a pump, so you'd hear like, kapoom, 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 and Pinhead screaming, stop it, stop it. We run to the house. I get in through the window. I start running up the stairs. You pull out that little pistol, and you shoot me right in the chest. I still got a scar where that little round pebble in my chest, it got all infected. You're a son of a bitch. You could probably still see it. It's somewhere around here. I can feel it.
I don't remember this incident at all, Mr. Hoffa.
Yeah. So when you say you're the one, I distinctly remember you shooting me in the chest.
Well, these things can, it's up for interpretation of what happened. So another great story from my book, Confessions of a Catholic High School Graduate, is there's a chapter in there entitled Running for Your Life. And it did seem that a lot of the time you and I were running, and our friends were running from someone or something.
Oh, we were fast.
And you would think that a school for the deaf wouldn't be on our target list, but there was this large school for the deaf in Throgs Neck, and we never really even knew what it was. It's such a big facility. It had tons of property, and it would look like something out of The Shining, and it had this big field. And at the time, in this big fenced-off field, they had crab apples. And it was fenced in, so we used to tunnel under the fence like rats, get into that field, collect the crab apples, and you want to take it from there?
Okay, so where this place is, it's elevated from the highway, which is about 2 or 3 stories down, going towards the Whitestone Bridge. Right. And I don't know who threw the first apple, but somebody threw it over the fence, goes about 10, 15 feet in the air, and then skyrockets down on the highway. It's a 4-lane highway. And boom, lands in front of a car. And then somebody else grabs an apple. I bet you I can hit a car. And then the next one, and the next one. And the next thing you know, hundreds of apples are being thrown over onto moving traffic. Like I said, we made up stuff as we went along. There was no rule book.
Well, the thing is, back then the cars were they were tanks. So you weren't really denting anyone's car. They were just going dink.
They were kind of mushy, the apples.
It depended on when we got them. I remember sometimes they were rock hard. But when we would throw them, the cars, there were no cell phones, so no one could call the cops. You'd have to get off or tell the toll guy. and there was no way for them to get off and come back around and get us, and there were no cell phones. So left to our own device, you could do that for an hour before someone caught on to what you were doing. And what would happen is, a couple of times across that field, you would hear the steel door swing open, and it was these two portly security guards. And they had uniforms, and I remember them waddling, going, "Hey, get the fuck out of there!" And we would continue to throw the apples for a good 20 minutes until they
we had time. We had time.
Had lots of time, and we waited until they got close enough. We weren't afraid of them catching us. We were afraid of them seeing our faces. I remember that. And then we would run across the field. It was a distance. Tunnel back come back, pop up on Lafayette Avenue, and run through the cemetery. And we were doing this the entire summer. And one day, it's like anything else in life. You do something bad too many times, something bad's going to happen to you. And it was a bunch of us. And we're throwing the apples. I hear that door swing open.
Oh, they hired a ringer.
Yeah, they hired a ringer. It's just like Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, when they hired the Pinkertons. Remember the horses come running out? He goes,
yep.
Yeah, they hired Bob LaForce. And all of a sudden, there's this young security guard. He's running across that field like a cheetah across the Serengeti.
Oh, my God. The grass was parting behind him. That guy was going so fast.
I looked up and I said, "Holy shit, this guy's moving. We got to go." And you're like, "We got time." I go, "I'm out of here." I always had that sixth sense. And you were athletic, too. The two of us took off. And a couple of our other friends didn't fast so well because and smacked the shit out of them. And one of the kids, we always used to say, if he got busted, it's like busting God, because he's going to give them your parents' maiden name, your social security number. So we didn't go home. We waited by his house. And when he came home, he was like, his shirt was torn off half. He had like a palm print across his face. And like, "What happened?" He goes, "What happened?" "He beat the shit out of me." And me and you were like, "Oh, that's terrible. Did you give him our names?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, is he coming here?" He goes, "No, he didn't seem to care. He was just kind of too busy kicking my ass." So we kind of dodged a bullet that time, where even though he gave us up, nothing came back to the house.
Well, that was the moment where they said, "Okay, we got them. If we catch them again," we didn't do it after that. After that, that was kind of the come to Jesus moment where we says, "Okay, well, that bridge is burned. We got to stay clear from that for a while." We didn't get caught. He got caught. So, every once in a while, somebody's got to fall on the sword. It's usually the slowest guy.
Yeah, and, well, I mean, I was always, listen, for all the crap that we did in our childhood, I did have a fear of our parents, especially Dad. Not that Dad was abusive or anything, but, I mean, Dad would beat your ass if you did something wrong, and especially if you brought shame on the house. You know what I mean? Like if the neighbors found out we were doing, although the neighbors knew what we were doing, But Dad just had a zero tolerance policy for anything reaching the house. So I always, in the back of my mind, just didn't want to cross that line.
Well, I can tell you this is a 100% true story. A friend of mine says, "Hey, would you come with me to go pick up my books? I left them at my house. We got to take the bus. I'll pay for you. And I'll buy you some candy." I says, "Okay." We must have been about 10 years old, 9, 10 years old. Jump on the 40 bus, take it up to Parkchester, get on another bus. We go further towards Hunts Point. We get off. We start walking through. He's a Spanish kid. I'm white as a ghost. We start heading towards one of the buildings. Cops pull up and say, "Hey, what are you doing here?" "My friend's books, he left it in school. He's got to go to his grandparents' house. If I catch you guys buying drugs," and it's like, "Drugs? What are drugs? I'm 10 years old. I don't know. We didn't even have the talk yet." We go to the building. I'm sitting outside the stoop. He goes inside. He comes back out. He goes, "Oh, they weren't there. Okay, let's go to the candy store." Start walking up towards the candy store. 2 cops grab us. Throw us up against the fence. "Where's the drugs?" And I'm going, I'm scared. I never talked to a cop before. I'm scared shitless. "I don't know what you're talking about, drugs." Goes in the kid's pocket. There's 3 bags of weed. "What's this?" I went, "I don't know. I've never seen weed before." Like I said, I'm young. I'm kind of stupid. I know what beer is. I don't know what weed is yet. But I was about to find out. He takes the 2 bags. He gives it to the kid. He says, "Eat it." Kid says, "I don't want it." He goes, "Eat it or you're going to jail." And he gives one to me. He says, "Eat it." And I almost shit myself. All the blood comes out of my head. It's in my feet. I'm white as a ghost. Eat it. You lied to me. I put it in my mouth. It's dirt. It's terrible. I start spitting it up. He says, if I catch you here again, you're going to jail. I would rather take a beating from the cops, eat weed, throw up, shit on the side of the road, than wind up in the car going home and have them walk me in. I would have slept outside before I had Dad see me come home. So that was my first drug use.
You know, it's funny. The other day I had to stop at AAA to get something notarized. And I had a flashback because you know how Mom and Dad were about AAA? Like, that was the gold standard. Like, when we went on vacation, we didn't have any money. So Mom would scrimp and save throughout the year, and she would order those AAA travel packs.
The trip dick.
Packs, about that thick.
We have one somewhere.
Oh, yeah, I have one. I saved one, too, after they passed. And I just remember Dad was so proud of having that AAA card because it had what year you joined up. And I'll never forget this. And this goes into, I wanted to ask you about Dad's famous quotes. And I remember Dad showing me the AAA card. And he goes, "You see this, pal? Member since 1966. That's the year you were born, jerk off." You know, and I wrote down a couple of Dad's famous quotes from our childhood.
He would start a sentence with, "Let me tell you something, pal."
Oh my God, yeah. Let me tell you.
Most sentences. Whenever you would say something stupid, his first thing was, "Let me tell you something, pal."
Pal. Here's one. Let's see if you remember this about Dad. "The only thing fair about life is death." And I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Listen, pal." He goes, "It doesn't matter how rich you are, how much money you have, how many women you have. We're all going in the ground in the end, and it doesn't matter." Let's see. Oh, here's one of Dad's famous ones that's in the book. He would warn me if he was warning you about something. "Vic, if you do that, Jesus Christ isn't going to be able to save you." He goes, "He's the guy up there. I'm the guy down here." He goes, "If I catch you doing that, whatever it was, Jesus Christ is not going to be able to save you." And this one is my favorite. Now, our Aunt Mary, she's no longer with us. She was like a nun. As a matter of fact, at one time, she entered the seminary in the 60s. And she was a very good person, and she always tried to keep the family together and always kept in touch with distant family members. And my father would go, "You haven't seen these people in years. Why are you going to visit them?" And Mary would often go to these people's funerals that she hadn't seen in 30 years. And Dad's quote was, "Mary would drive 100 miles to see a body."
Do you remember what the nicknames he used to call you and me when he would refer to us?
There might be some heavy editing here, but go for it.
Well, you were Dick, and I was Little Dick. If I was there by myself, he would just say, "Listen, Dick." That's how we started off every conversation. "And your brother, Big Dick."
Yeah, he was something else.
With love. He said it with love. I mean, it's...
I know. People hearing this are going to think that our father was a terrible...
It was a term of endearment. He really did mean it.
Oh, he was funny.
And we were dicks. There's no question about that. I did the stupidest things.
Yeah, and he definitely would call us out on it. There was no two ways about that. Well, you gave me a funny name that Dad jumped on. You used to call me the towel sheriff when we were teenagers. You want to explain how that came to be, and then I'll explain to the audience what really happened?
I'm going to let you take lead on this one.
Yeah, sure. So you can hack at it. Okay. So we only had one bathroom, and it was my brother and I and my parents, and at one time, our grandparents. He had 6 people with like a half bathroom upstairs. It was a little shower tub combo and a toilet and a sink. It was very small. So your time was limited in the bathroom. There was always, you couldn't spend a lot of time in there because someone would be banging on the door, especially our grandparents, they were old. This clown would go up there. Well, first off, what he would do is, before he took a shower, he'd run that water for 45 minutes to get it piping hot. Then he would take a couple of large body towels and he would throw them in the dryer at nuclear heat. Then he would pull said towels out of the dryer and put it in a plastic bag to keep the heat in. Then he would
It's not a shame to pamper yourself.
Wait, hold on. I'm not done yet. Then he would have music playing. He'd have like a radio. I mean, it was a tiny vanity, but he'd have like a boombox in there. Then he'd have his various colognes and lotions, right? It was like living with J-Lo. Then he'd come out, and leave all that crap all over the place, and then there'd be no towels in the house. So after one time, I was like, I had to dry myself with like a washcloth. I had enough. So one day he was finishing up. I said, stop using all the goddamn towels. I said, use one. And he goes, what are you, the towel sheriff? And my father thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Go ahead.
Well, listen, it's he who gets caught with the bag. Once again, had you not opened up your mouth and shamed me into this, your name would not have stuck as the sheriff of Nottingham of towels. Listen, you don't get to pick your nickname. Nobody gets to be T-Bone.
That's true. So that nickname happened when I was like 18, 17, right? Here we go, fast forward 12, 13 years later. I'm in my 30s. We're going over to my parents' house for dinner, right? And usually the last one through the door at my parents' house at one of the holidays is going to get abused. I had the upper leg because I lived closer by. I lived in my aunt's building down the block, so I could just run over there quick because you didn't want to come in late because then the other two would start attacking you. And I remember a couple of times coming through the door and you going, hey, Dad, look who's here. It's the towel sheriff. Woo! And you, oh, Marshall, don't lock me up. Here comes the towel sheriff. And Dad thought that was...
Hide the towels.
Yeah, the towel sheriff's here. That fucking name stuck for years. All right, so I want to tell... Oh, you want to hear something funny? That now that it's just you and I going back and forth. Someone commented through social media, referred to me as Phil Leotardo. And I brought it up on the podcast that someone had called me Phil. Then another guy on YouTube refers to me as the Shah of Iran, which is another name for Phil Leotardo. So keep them coming. I thought it was actually very funny.
What do you mean? We're off the air now?
No.
Oh.
No. So, all right. So you got any funny NYPD stories you want to share?
Oh, well, okay. I got a Jackie the Joke Man story. If you guys remember from Howard Stern, his head writer for years, Jackie the Joke Man, and famous comedian from the late '70s, early '80s,
Yeah,
huge radio career, continues, even has a Netflix or something special. So he's doing a club out in Long Island. And he's got his wife's car. It was a Volvo, and it was the end of the show. I think he had the keys in it. Somebody clips the Volvo. In the back, he has thousands of CDs in plastic bags, hot dogs and donuts, all the silly CDs, like almost like vaudeville act CDs, thousands of them. So I'm working in the 3-3. I'm working the property room. I walk in the morning. I look at the name on the voucher. There's a car that just came in, a Volvo. There's tons of Jackie the Joke Man CDs in it, like maybe 10 bags of CDs filled to the top, ripping out of the... I says, oh, Jackie the Joke Man. I says, what, did somebody... I figured somebody was pirating it or somebody was bootlegging it. I look at the voucher. It says Nancy Suriani Martling. And I went, holy shit, is this Jackie Martling's car? So one of the guys says, yeah, we already called him. He couldn't come last night. He's coming in today. So we were waiting around to see him, to get an autograph signed, to hang out,
Someone
and talk
stole
with
his
him.
car and it got recovered in the 3-3?
Yeah. So here's the funniest thing. All the cops, like all these CDs were all over the place. So a bunch of cops take them. They put them in the CD players. They start listening. After 5-10 minutes of listening, the jokes are so old and tired and terrible. They all put the CDs back in the cases and put them back in the property room. So nobody took extra CDs. So he shows up. He's signing autographs. He's shaking hands. He's handing out the CDs to the cops, and the cops are going, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, we can't accept this. And he's like, no, you got to take it. It's like, no, a handshake is enough. Like a lot of guys were taking Polaroids with them. There was no digitals back then, so they were taking Polaroids and stuff. And every CD that they recovered, like I said, there must have been 1,000. If there was 1,000 CDs recovered, 1,000 CDs went right back to Jackie. And he couldn't. So finally the boss came out and he goes, listen, I'm telling you for all the guys, they can't accept any CDs. He's like, okay, no problem. Sweetest guy. Not one of his CDs was missing out of the car. They all went back to him. I love you, Jackie, if you're out there.
Well, if J.D. Harmeyer from the Howard Stern Show comes across this podcast, you're more than welcome to use this clip, because I'm sure he'll give that to Howard, and Howard will go. This thing will wind up going viral. What else?
Yeah, this is the first. Oh, well, I can tell you the time I met Lou Ferrigno and he strong-armed me for $20.
Well, let's hear that.
All right, Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk. I was working downtown, and there was a comic book convention. So my wife met me down there. We go and I know the sergeant that was working the door. They had all security police officers. So down in the basement, you could go and see celebrities. You could see Chewbacca. You could see everybody was down there. So Lou Ferrigno, who was the Incredible Hulk, back if you look over my shoulder here, one of these pictures. I don't know if it's here. Yeah, there he is. There's a story about that. So the sergeant says, go around. He says, just tell them you're on the job, and they'll sign an autograph for free. I said, okay. So I walk up, I meet a couple of guys. There's Lou Ferrigno. He's sitting all by himself. Now, not only was he the Incredible Hulk, but I think he was on Everybody Loves Raymond or some of these shows.
He's done a lot of things.
He was on Stern. He used to come on. His father was a cop. So he's by himself and nobody's walking up to him. And not to mention, I love the Incredible Hulk. So I walk up to him. My wife's standing behind me. I go to shake his hand. I says, hey, how you doing, Lou? I says, a big fan of yours. He looks at me and goes, thank you. What's your name? I says, Pete. He says, you can have a poster and a photo. And I says, no, thank you. I just wanted to tell you, thank you. Great job. You're on Stern. He says, okay. He hands me the photo and he goes, $20. And I says, $20 for what? And he says, you can have a photo and a poster for $20. And I says, it was nice meeting you, Lou. And I go to shake his hand and he grabs my hand and he locks my grip. And I went, are you kidding me? And he goes, $20 for a poster and a signed autograph. I turned around and looked at my wife. He's got my hand. The fucking Incredible Hulk has got my hand. I reach into my pocket, and this was the 90s. So it's not like $20 was a lot, but it wasn't a little. And I reach into my pocket, and I'm going, I pull out a bunch of bills. I slide out a 20. I throw it on the table. He goes, thank you, Pete. You can have a photo and a poster. And he lets my hand.
Jeff.
He lets my hand go, and I step back, and I went, did that just fucking happen? Did Lou Ferrigno just... And he puts his head down, and he starts writing, step down, and I step back, and my wife goes, let's just get out of here. Let's just get... That's incredible.
He's deaf. Okay.
I know he's deaf. That doesn't mean that he didn't just steal $20 from me. He's just sitting there with his head down, right, and I went, and as you can see, right behind me is the signed photo that says, to Peter, from Lou Ferrigno.
I'm pretty sure. I know he's from Brooklyn. I read somewhere that his dad
was a cop.
Yeah, I was going to say that. A cop or a detective or a sergeant. I know he was on the job.
Listen, the guy was frighteningly big.
Oh, yeah.
And the personality is larger than life. And he just stared me down and went, you can have a poster and you can have a signed autograph. Listen, when the Incredible Hulk tells you to give him $20, you give him $20.
I agree with you. Hey, you want to do the news?
Yeah, sure. Whatever you want.
Okay, so we're going to, from the page is the New York Post. New NYPD policy bans romantic relationships between bosses and subordinates.
Oh, my. Yeah.
I know. It's funny, right? The department quietly issued orders banning steamy relationships between bosses and subordinates weeks after a lap dance scandal rocked the department.
Do they know how babies are made? How are women ever going to... that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's...
Well, they're not going to stop it. It's listen, and I hate to say, people listening to this podcast that don't work in law enforcement or especially a large department like the NYPD, you go to most precincts, the sergeant's driver is an attractive female. I'm sorry. That's just the way it goes. Not always, but a lot of times. And the females usually don't have a problem with it. The supervisors don't have a problem with it. And that's just the way it goes. And like you just said, it's men and women.
It's all consensual.
Well, you're right. I mean, unless the guy is getting handsy with the female or the female stalking the male, how you gonna? It's unenforceable. It's gonna be, it's just like typical NYPD. What they're gonna do is they make this announcement. They're not gonna do anything about it. But when they want to hammer somebody and they've got nothing else on them,
Right, they'll keep it in their back pocket until they need it.
Right. It's a secret. It's the poison pill in case they need to take somebody out. New York parolee busted in vicious attack on cancer patient. The guy is 91 years old after cops recognize him. A career criminal out on parole. Shout out again to the New York State Parole Board. Was busted for callously shoving a 91-year-old man during a botched robbery in the Upper East Side that left the victim hospitalized. Christian Torres, and that's funny, Christian, was stepping off the number 6 train, which is our train that goes to taking of Pelham 123 in East Harlem, was nabbed by eagle-eyed patrol cops who recognized him from a wanted post. That's great police work, guys, whoever made that collar. They just keep letting these guys out. They just keep reoffending, and the guy's 91 years old. I know.
From what I heard, the victim was asking for. He was dressed provocatively.
A 91-year-old man was dressed provocatively. To quote our neighbor, don't be a paper asshole. All right. And our last story, NYPD hunts for anti-Semitic creep who pounded man with bat and called him a dirty Jew. An anti-Semitic creep was hit over the head with a baseball bat after calling him a dirty Jew on Staten Island last week. The 25-year-old victim was confronted by a hateful stranger on Grandview Avenue in Mariners Harbor around 2:30 p.m. in Staten Island. Things like this, it were unthinkable in Staten Island. Staten Island during our time was thought of as the country, right? I mean, nothing really. I mean,
there's nothing on Staten Island except a bunch of Italians and a giant dump and an incinerator. That's it.
What do you mean an incinerator?
That's where we send all our garbage. That's where we send it. They have that giant incinerator. That's where all the garbage trucks wind up going. You never did a records destruction with the police department?
No, I didn't. The giant property. How does that work?
Oh my God! I used to love going out there. You go over the Guinea gangplank, the Verrazano Bridge. You fill it up.
Wait. For full disclosure, my brother and I are half Italian, so I don't want to catch any crap that we're anti-Semitic. We're half Irish, half Italian, but go ahead.
Okay, so you gather all the records that have to be destroyed, everything that has names, date of birth, social security numbers, everything in the precinct, after a while has to go to destruction. You load it up in a giant van, a barrier truck, you drive it out to Staten Island, and like I said, there's two things on Staten Island. You go to the left, there's Italians and mafia. You go to the right, there's a giant dump and an incinerator. And all the garbage trucks turn out of there. And there's this huge incinerator. I don't know how many stories high. And you pull up, guy signs for it. And the first time I went out there, the guy goes, I said, well, are you going to dump it in? He goes, it's your garbage, you put it in. You open it up the door, and it's the gates of hell. So you're about 5 stories up. The thing's another 10 stories high. And there's just flames shooting out. And once he opens up the door, the flames get sucked back in, and you just start firing the crates of stuff in there. And it just evaporates within seconds. Guy signs for it, you destroyed these records, all the log books, memo books, everything gets destroyed, and you drive off. You go get yourself a cannoli.
Yeah, that's a story from one of my books about how you live your life as a gluttonous Roman. As the property clerk, you would drop your property off by 9 o'clock in the morning. That would leave you to hit Cat's Deli and the 2nd Avenue Deli and Little Italy for your cannoli.
Gus's Pickles.
But anyway, it's terrible that guy got hit with a bat by this anti-Semitic creep, and we hope that this 25-year-old victim recovers. He got hit in the head with a bat, and it's just terrible. It's just what's happened in New York City. Fredo, I want to thank you. You got anything you want to plug?
No, that's it. No, I'd like to plug Monkey Shoulder.
What's Monkey Shoulder?
Oh, it's a good whiskey.
Again, I have no idea why you're drinking whiskey on
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Don't
judge.
Don't judge. Oh, I'll judge. As always, and thank you, Fredo. I really appreciate it. As always, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my friends in Montreal, Quebec, London, Ontario, Regina, Saskatchewan, Houston, Texas, Bronxville, New York, which used to have a really good restaurant. I can't think of the name of it. And especially my friends in the New York City 5 boroughs, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and of course, Fredo and I's home base, the Bronx. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background and would like to be a guest on the show, drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. If you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon author page. Type in my name, Vic Ferrari like the car, where you can preview all my books for free, including NYPD Law and Disorder. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Fredo, again, and I'll have an episode out next week.
Anytime, brother.